The glass slipped in her hand. Not shattered, just enough to tilt, to spill cold water across the white tablecloth and draw every eye in the room to her frozen breath. Silence hit the restaurant like a held gunshot. She stood there, heart pounding, fingers trembling, knowing she had just made a mistake that could not be undone. Because the two men seated at opposite ends of the private dining room were not supposed to be in the same city, let alone the same room. And both of them were watching her now. Very carefully. Very closely. One of them stopped stirring his drink. The other slowly set his fork down, as if sudden movement might break whatever fragile thing had just snapped into place. Neither man raised his voice. Neither needed to. The air itself tightened. She felt it before she understood it. The shift, the danger, the invisible line she had crossed without ever seeing it. Her name was on the tip of her tongue, ready to spill an apology, when one of the men spoke. Softly. Almost pleasantly. "Leave it," he said, eyes never leaving her face. The other man smiled. Not warmly. Not kindly. A smile sharpened by possession. "Actually," he replied, "I'd like to hear her speak." That was when she realized something far worse than spilled water had just occurred. They were not looking at her like a waitress anymore. They were looking at her like a secret. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Before we go any further, pause for just a second. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Let me know how your day's been so far. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. Stories like this only get darker, deeper, and far more dangerous from here. Now let's go back to that room. The restaurant sat quietly on a narrow European street, the kind of place tourists never found and locals whispered about. Low amber lights. Heavy curtains. Tables spaced far enough apart that conversations dissolved into shadows before reaching another ear. She had worked there for 8 months. 8 months of long nights, aching feet, and memorizing the habits of powerful men who liked their food perfect and their privacy untouched. She had learned quickly who mattered. She had learned even faster who frightened the staff into silence. But she had never seen both of them here at the same time. One was younger than people expected. Early 30s. Clean cut. Expensive suit worn like second skin. Calm eyes that missed nothing. He carried himself like a man who did not need to prove his power because the room already knew it. The other was just as young. Just as controlled. But colder. Sharper. His presence pressed outward, dominating space without movement, like a blade resting against a throat that hadn't realized it was being threatened yet. Two rival empires. Two men whose names were never spoken aloud in the same sentence. And somehow, both of them had been watching her for weeks. She felt it now, the weight of their attention, the way the room seemed to orbit her small, accidental mistake. "I'm sorry," she finally said, voice steady despite the panic racing beneath it. "I'll clean this up immediately." She reached for a napkin. "A mistake." "Stop," the colder man said. Not loud. Not angry. Just final. Her hand froze midair. The younger one, the calmer one, leaned back in his chair, studying her like a puzzle that had suddenly grown interesting. "What's your name?" he asked. Her heartbeat stumbled. In this restaurant, names mattered. Names were remembered. Names were followed. She hesitated half a second too long. And both men noticed. "Tell him," the other said quietly, eyes darkening, "before I lose patience." She swallowed. And spoke. That single word, her name, hung in the air longer than it should have. Too long. The calmer man repeated it under his breath, tasting it. The colder man's jaw tightened. And in that instant, something unspoken passed between them. Recognition. Possession. Competition. She felt it like a chill across her spine. Neither of them had ordered her to leave. Neither had dismissed her. They were both still watching her as if she belonged there, to them, instead of the restaurant. Instead of herself. "You can go," the calmer one said finally, though his eyes lingered. She nodded quickly and turned away, every step measured, professional, controlled, until she reached the service corridor and had to brace herself against the wall just to breathe. Her reflection stared back at her from the stainless steel surface, wide-eyed, shaken, unaware that her life had just split cleanly in two. She didn't know it yet. But from that moment on, every step she took would be watched. Every choice measured. Every silence interpreted. Because rival mafia bosses do not share territory. They do not share power. And they certainly do not share obsession. Yet somehow, they had both chosen the same woman. And before this story ends, she would be forced to choose which danger was more deadly. Being noticed. Or trying to escape. If you're already feeling the tension, leave a comment. Tell me what you think happens next, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next part changes everything. She learned to move through the restaurant the way other people learn to walk without scuffing the floorboards, by rote, by muscle memory, by pretending the room was a map whose edges could never change. Sophia Murrin had learned more than menus in 8 months. She had learned how to read a room the way some people read poetry, scavenging tone and silence for the truth beneath. She knew when a laugh was real and when it was a warning. She knew, by the angle of someone's shoulder, which customers would tip and which would take without regret. She knew the weight of a glance that wasn't about food. Sophia was 23, slender but solid in the shoulders from long nights carrying trays and lifting espresso machines. Her hands were small and efficient, calluses hid beneath skin that still caught the light with a softness she hated because it made her feel exposed. She wore her hair blunt at the shoulder, an easy cut that didn't require thinking. Her uniform was tidy, her apron held 2 pens, a receipt pad, and the small photograph tacked inside, her mother, laughing in a sunlit courtyard 2 summers ago, hair windblown, eyes crinkled with a life Sophia had promised to restore. Her deepest desire was not drama or riches. It was quiet and insistently human, safety for her mother, the rent paid on time, mornings when the electricity hadn't been cut. She wanted a life that allowed her to buy a cheap bouquet once a month and not flinch when a bank message popped up on her cracked phone. That was why she had taken this job in the tucked-away restaurant the locals called Illinois Cervello, a place that served mocha foam like it was sin and kept its doors closed to the wrong kind of people. The hours were late, the tips were decent enough, and the staff, small and precise, treated each other like family out of necessity. Her fear, raw and immediate, was being noticed in a way that turned her into property. She had seen it before in smaller towns, a smile that lingered, a handshake that tightened, a patron who began to arrive a little too often, who asked which train she took home, who left a €20 bill folded in a note that said, "Call me." Those men had wanted something that didn't belong to them, her laughter, her evenings, the split second of her life that could be bought and kept. Sophia wanted none of it. She wanted to be chosen for what she could be, not past someone decided she belonged to them. Then there were the people who made the restaurant feel like more than a place of work. Marco Little, co-worker and occasional confidant, had a laugh that spilled like water and a loyalty Sophia had learned to rely on. He was 30, a stocky man with laugh lines that predated his joy, and he watched the room with the slow wariness of someone who had survived a childhood that taught him to count exits. He brought Sophia coffee when the morning forecast promised a power cut and told her to keep the photograph of her mother close when the nights turned frayed and sharp. Marco's father had once worked in shipping, he respected labor and knew how to be honorable without ceremony. Marco was the small, constant anchor in Sophia's life, the friend she could lean on without asking. On the other side of the staff lineup was Layla Duarte, the head waitress who moved like an empress, older enough to be wary and young enough to hope. Layla's rules were blunt: never serve a man who asked for more than you, never accept a lift alone from a customer, never, ever let a private table feel like public property. When Sophia spilled the water she had not meant to spill, it was Layla who steadied her breath in the back corridor and, with a single hand against Sophia's shoulder, told her in a voice that hid worry behind steel, "Don't speak until I say. Breathe." Sophia had secrets of her own that she kept rolled tight like coins in a pocket. At 19 she had left a small town on the coast, a place where small towns had the tenderness to love you and the smallness to crush you. She had come to the city with 2 things, a duffel bag and a promise. Somewhere in those arriving days she learned to box, an ugly necessity at first, an after-hours class in a gym that smelled of metal and old sweat. The trainer taught her to keep her hands up and her eyes forward. Boxing taught her economy of movement, an economy she applied to her life: conserve energy, avoid unnecessary conflict, but when forced to act, act with definitive motion. She never told anyone about the nights she trained until she bled and the nights she trained until she laughed again. It felt like a luxury to hide that muscle under a waitress's uniform. The 2 men who had watched her in the private dining room that night were different kinds of danger, and the story of their watching would fracture her carefully ordered life. The first, Adrian Salvatore, had the look of a man who had studied restraint and then decided it had tired of being polite. He was 34, hair dark and carefully unruly, a face meant for magazines but kept intentionally flat in expression, the kind of beauty that could be disarming because it offered nothing easy to read. He wore his suit like armor, soft shoulders and precise seams. Adrian was a strategist in a roomful of impulsive men, calm as a pond until the surface broke. People who knew him used the word certain in the same breath as his name. Sophia had seen him once before, at a corner table, nearer the back, watching the way a man's hands trembled as he ate. Adrian's interest felt like a slow burn, deliberate, assessing, the sort of attention that catalogued a person for private files. Adrian's obsession with her did not come from a single glance. It was accumulation, small adjustments in his timing that positioned him in sightlines her shift routine exposed. He arrived the week before with a friend and sat at the bar for 2 nights running, asking about the menu and the chef, and then, without being seen, left a tip in a pattern only a methodical person could make. That pattern had multiplied over the following days until Sophia felt the inevitability of his gaze like a pressure in her chest. The second man, Jin Corbett, Korean, 32, features handsome in a narrower, colder way, brought a different weight. Where Adrian catalogued, Jin claimed. He moved with abruptness, his laughter was a knife rather than a cushion. He owned a Rand sheen in his suits that caught the light and made him appear as if he had stepped out of a photograph. Jin's interest was fertilizer to rumor. He arrived with people who closed doors and ordered entire wines without tasting a drop. He noticed small things, how Sophia straightened a fork, the cadence of her laughter, and then made them the architects of his own amusement. A man like Jin didn't observe long before deciding something should be done about wanting it. Neither Adrian nor Jin had ever shared an obsession. The city had rules for that, turf carved like old scars and respected in polite silence. Yet every rule in the city's quiet playbook had been bent in the last week, and both men had found reasons to be at Illinois Cervello at improbable hours. That puzzle should have been the staff's concern, but Sophia, who had always prided herself on knowing which table pressure would pop, felt the heat of being watched more personally. She began to imagine the ways things could tilt, tips replaced with demands, small smiles replaced by invitations to dinner that wore a second meaning, handshakes that arrived with a clause. Sophia's secret muscles, those trained fists and the lessons of the gym, felt both like hope and like an accusation. She imagined herself boxing in a dingy ring and then took her apron off and realized the world did not applaud when a waitress fought back. The gym's late-night glow could not be the same as the street at 2 in the morning. Yet, the thought of walking past a pair of suited men without flinching felt intoxicating. It felt like reclaiming control. The stakes were simple and immediate. If she let either man own a part of her life, the rent would stop being a priority and would become a coin used to buy silence, protection, and then something else she had not asked for. If she fought, she could lose more than the job, she could be exposed, pushed into a corner where power used her like a pawn. Each path promised pain and surrender in different shapes. "Leave a note under the register," Marco murmured that night, pressing a foil-wrapped croissant into Sophia's hand as cover. "If something happens, call this number." He gave her his phone. It felt like a talisman. Marco's eyes were not dramatic. They were practical. He'd been around men who liked to count people as losses if it protected them. "And Sophia," he added, softer this time, "don't go alone to the alley after midnight." A small sigh escaped her, half gratitude, half fear, and she tucked the phone into her apron pocket like a secret. The photograph in her apron, the gym's bruise collection, Marco's small acts of care, Layla's blunt rules, they formed a lattice under which she had arranged her life. None of it had prepared her for 2 men in their 30s, handsome, careful, and dangerous in entirely different currencies, deciding she was worth altering the rules for. Sophia learned, in those quiet moments between rounds and tables, that obsession was not always loud. Sometimes it worked by subtraction, removing the freedom you had taken for granted, the train you boarded, the friends you kept, even the small pleasures of buying a croissant. She had no illusions about what men like Adrian and Jin wanted. She also had no illusions about what she would do to keep the life she had earned slowly, painfully, for her and her mother. She looked at the photograph tucked against her chest and promised, without ceremony, to choose. Not for trophy or love, but for the small, stubborn thing she had always wanted, freedom from being chosen by a price. If you're following Sophia's fight so far, drop a comment below, tell me which boss you think is more dangerous and why. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next part. Things get darker before they get clearer. The mistake happened in less than 3 seconds. Sophia was balancing 2 crystal wine glasses when the private dining room door opened again. The room's temperature shifted the way it did before a storm, no sound, just pressure. Adrian Salvatore stepped inside first, unhurried, eyes already taking inventory. Jin Corbett followed half a pace behind, smiling like the room had been built for him alone. 2 rival gravity wells. 1 room. Sophia felt it before she understood it. Her pulse kicked hard, loud enough that she was sure someone could hear it. Rival bosses did not share space casually. Not here. Not ever. This was not coincidence, it was provocation. And she, standing between the table and the door, apron tied tight, hands steady only because she forced them, was suddenly part of it. Wine, Jin said, already seated, crossing one leg over the other. He didn't look at the menu. He looked at her. Your best. Adrian waited until Sophia set the glasses down before speaking. Italian red, he said quietly. Decant it. Their voices overlapped just enough to scrape. Layla's rule echoed in Sophia's head, never let a private table feel like public property, but this table had just become something else entirely. A line drawn in silk and crystal. Sophia nodded once. No smile. Neutral. Efficient. She turned toward the bar, acutely aware of the space between their chairs, the way neither man yielded an inch. She felt like a match held over gasoline. The decanter slipped. Not fully, just enough. A thin, violent arc of red wine leapt from glass to fabric, splashing across Adrian's tailored suit, bleeding into the black like a wound. Time broke. The room inhaled. Jin laughed once, sharp, delighted, dangerous. Adrian didn't move. Sophia froze, heart slamming into her ribs. I'm so sorry, she said, already reaching for a cloth, the words automatic, useless. The stain spread slowly, obscenely visible. Every rule in her body screamed run. Adrian looked down at his suit, then back up at her face. For a moment, there was nothing there. No anger. No surprise. Just assessment. Then he stood. The chair legs whispered against the floor. The sound landed harder than a shout. It's fine, Adrian said calmly, holding up one finger, not to her, but to the room. His eyes never left Sophia. Accidents happen. Jin leaned back, studying them both, grin widening. You sure? He asked lightly. That jacket costs more than this place makes in a month. Adrian ignored him. He reached out, not touching Sophia, stopping just short of her wrist. Close enough that she felt the heat of his skin, the control and the restraint. Look at me, he said. She did. That was the second mistake. Something shifted in Adrian's expression, not desire, not anger, but recognition. As if the spill had stripped away pretense and revealed something he had been circling without naming. His thumb twitched, the smallest betrayal of impulse. Jin saw it. Interesting, Jin murmured, eyes flicking between them. Didn't know you collected staff now. Adrian finally turned. The air between the men hardened. She's an employee, Adrian said evenly. Not a bargaining chip. Jin smiled wider. Everything is a bargaining chip. Sophia stepped back then, one step only, but deliberate. The movement snapped something into place. Both men noticed. The waitress was not frozen. Marco appeared at the doorway, tension etched into his shoulders. Layla followed, jaw tight. The restaurant had gone silent in that way silence becomes a witness. I'll clean this immediately, Sophia said, voice steady now. Her fear had condensed into clarity. If you'll excuse me. She turned to leave. Wait, Jin said. Adrian spoke at the same time. Let her go. The overlap was a gunshot. Jin rose slowly, adjusting his cuff. I think, he said, eyes never leaving Sophia, we should all stay a moment longer. I'd hate for this misunderstanding to end too quickly. Sophia felt it then, the true shape of the danger. This was no longer about wine or etiquette. This was a contest, and she had been dragged into the center of it without consent. Adrian took one step toward Jin. You're not leaving with her. Jin's gaze sharpened. You planning to stop me? Neither man looked away. Sophia slipped past them. No one stopped her. But as she pushed through the kitchen doors, heart pounding, she knew with cold certainty that something irreversible had just been set in motion. Two powerful men had locked eyes over her existence, and neither of them had lost interest. Behind her, the sound of raised voices bled through the walls. Ahead of her, the alley waited. And Sophia Murrin understood, for the first time, that staying invisible was no longer an option. By the next evening, Sophia could feel it before she saw it. The restaurant had not changed, the same amber lighting, the same quiet clink of cutlery, the same murmured conversations wrapped in velvet discretion, but the air was wrong. Too alert. Too aware. Like a place that had learned how close it came to burning down. She tied her apron tighter than usual. Layla caught her wrist before she reached the floor. Private room tonight, she said under her breath. Both sides. Sophia's stomach dropped. Both. Layla didn't need to explain. They had all heard the rumors by now. Whispers passed between the kitchen and the bar, between the servers who had worked here long enough to know the difference between rich men and dangerous ones. Rival factions. Unfinished business. A waitress who had become a point of tension. Stay professional, Layla continued, voice firm but eyes worried. Say nothing you don't have to. If it feels wrong, leave. Sophia nodded, though they both knew how empty that advice was. You didn't simply leave when men like that decided otherwise. The private dining room door was already closed. She knocked once and entered. Adrian Salvatore sat at the table alone this time. No entourage. No visible guards. Just him, a glass of water untouched, jacket replaced, expression unreadable. He looked up immediately. Relief flashed across his face before he could stop it. It unsettled her more than anger would have. You're early, he said. I was assigned, Sophia replied, keeping her distance. Her voice was calm, but she could feel every nerve awake beneath her skin. Good, Adrian said quietly. Sit. The word landed wrong, not a command, but not a request either. I'm working, she said. His gaze held hers for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Of course. He leaned back, studying her again, not hungrily, not crudely. Like a man trying to solve a problem he couldn't afford to miscalculate. I didn't plan for yesterday, he said. Sophia paused. Neither did I. That spill, Adrian continued. It shouldn't have mattered. But Jin Corbett doesn't let things go. She stilled at the name. Neither do you, she said before she could stop herself. Something like a smile touched his mouth. No. Silence stretched. You should stay away from him, Adrian said at last. If he approaches you. I can't control who comes into the restaurant, Sophia cut in. Or what they decide. No, Adrian agreed softly. But I can. The implication hung heavy. Before she could respond, the door opened. Jin Corbett entered like he owned the air itself. Well, he drawled, eyes flicking between them, catching the tension immediately. Am I interrupting? Adrian didn't turn. Yes. Jin laughed, pulling out a chair and sitting anyway. Good. Means I arrived at the right time. Sophia felt trapped between them again, the same way she had the night before, but sharper now, charged. This was no accident. This was positioning. Wine, Jin said to her. And stay. Adrian's jaw tightened. She's not your server. Jin arched a brow. Is she yours? The question was a blade. Sophia straightened. I'll bring the wine, she said, refusing to answer either of them. As she turned, Jin's voice followed her. She's interesting, he said casually. Not many people hold their ground around you, Adrian. Adrian didn't respond. But when Sophia returned, the table felt like a battlefield dressed in linen. Conversation circled her without including her, territories discussed in code, deals hinted at and withdrawn, power flexed in silences rather than words. Each man watched how she moved, how she reacted, as if she were the variable they hadn't accounted for. At one point, Jin leaned toward her, voice low. You're wasted here, he murmured. You know that. She met his gaze steadily. I'm exactly where I choose to be. His smile sharpened. For now. Adrian's hand tightened around his glass. The tension built in layers, looks held too long, pauses that dared the other to act, proximity that felt deliberate. Sophia could feel herself being pulled into their gravity whether she wanted it or not. When Jin finally stood to leave, he stopped beside her. We'll talk soon, he said quietly. Alone. Adrian rose instantly. She won't. Jin smiled at him. You don't own her. No, Adrian replied, voice low and dangerous. But you don't threaten what's under my protection. Sophia's breath caught. Protection. From either of them, the word felt like a cage. Jin's eyes flicked to her one last time. Decide carefully, he said. Men like us don't compete for nothing. When the door closed behind him, the silence was suffocating. Adrian turned to her. You should go home early. Why? She asked. Because, he said quietly, this has stopped being a coincidence. As Sophia walked out into the night, she felt it, the tightening net, the attention she could no longer outrun. Two powerful men had drawn lines around her life. And the worst part? Somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear, a spark of something else had begun to burn. Curiosity. Defiance. And the dangerous sense that she was no longer just reacting. She was becoming the reason they were at war. The call came at 11:47 p.m. Sophia was halfway through removing her makeup, the day still clinging to her skin, when her phone vibrated against the sink. Unknown number. She stared at it for a long second, pulse ticking up, not fear yet, but recognition. The quiet had been too clean. Too temporary. She answered. Don't speak, a male voice said calmly. Familiar. Adrian. Just listen. Her chest tightened. She said nothing. You were followed when you left the restaurant, he continued. 2 blocks. Black sedan. Jin's people. Her stomach dropped. She moved instinctively, locking the door, turning off the bathroom light. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because, he said after a beat, he thinks you're hiding something. I'm not, Sophia said. I don't know anything about either of you. I believe that, Adrian replied. Until tonight. Silence stretched. Then he said the words that split the ground beneath her feet. You're not just a waitress. Her breath caught. You don't know what you're talking about. I know you answered a call in Italian last night, Adrian said quietly. Fluent. Regional dialect. You didn't even think about it. Sophia closed her eyes. That's not something you learn serving tables, he continued. And it's not the only thing that doesn't add up. The room felt smaller. I grew up speaking it, she said finally. That doesn't make me dangerous. No, Adrian agreed. But it makes you visible. A knock echoed faintly through her apartment wall. Someone in the hallway, not her door, but her heart spiked anyway. What does Jin think? She asked. Adrian exhaled slowly. He thinks you're leverage. Or bait. Or a lie someone planted between us. And you? She asked. He didn't answer right away. I think, he said carefully, you're the one variable neither of us planned for. Her phone buzzed again, another call trying to come through. Different number. She declined it without looking. That was him, Adrian said. Not a question. Yes. Listen to me, he said, voice low, urgent. Jin believes obsession is ownership. Once he decides something is his, he escalates until it breaks or submits. And you don't? Sophia challenged. A pause. I don't break what I want to protect. The word hit harder than she expected. Protect. You don't get to decide that, she said, though her voice wavered. I know, Adrian replied. That's why this is dangerous. Another vibration. A message this time. She didn't open it. What do you want from me? She asked. For now. Adrian said. Nothing. But tomorrow, everything changes. Before she could ask what he meant, the line went dead. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she opened it. You should have told him the truth, Jin's message read. Now I have to hear it from someone else. Cold spread through her veins. She typed back with shaking fingers. I don't know what you think I'm hiding. 3 dots appeared instantly. Your brother, Jin replied. The room tilted. Her brother had been a name she buried years ago. A life she had sealed shut and never opened again. The reason she had crossed borders. Changed names. Learned how to disappear behind service trays and neutral smiles. You're wrong, she typed. Jin's reply came with surgical calm. You were Sophia Marinelli once. Before you became Sophia Marin. Her knees buckled. She sank onto the edge of the bed, heart pounding so hard it hurt. He owes us, the message continued. And now so do you. A knock sounded at her door. Sharp. Certain. She didn't move. Her phone buzzed again, this time, a call. Adrian. She answered, breathless. He knows. I know, Adrian said. His voice was tight now. Controlled, but strained. He came to me with it. What did you tell him? She asked. That you're under my protection, Adrian said. Her chest seized. You shouldn't have done that. I had to, he replied. Because now this isn't about curiosity or rivalry anymore. The knock came again. Louder. Where are you? Adrian demanded. At home. Are you alone? She didn't answer. Sophia, he said sharply. No, she whispered. I'm not. The handle turned. Locked. For now. Listen to me very carefully, Adrian said. Do not open that door. Not for anyone. What if it's him? She asked. Especially if it's him. The truth settled in, heavy and undeniable. This was the midpoint. The moment after which nothing could be undone. She was no longer a coincidence. She was the reason 2 empires were about to collide. And somewhere between obsession and protection, Sophia Marin realized the most terrifying thing of all. Both men were telling the truth. And loving either of them might cost her everything. The knocking stopped. That was worse. Sophia stood frozen in the center of her apartment, phone pressed to her ear, listening to the silence stretch thin and dangerous. Her heartbeat thundered so loudly she was certain whoever stood on the other side of the door could hear it. "Adrian," she whispered. "He's not knocking anymore." "I know," Adrian replied. His voice had lost its earlier calm. This was command now, tight, clipped, controlled. "He won't force entry. Not yet." "Why not?" she asked. "Because Jin enjoys fear," Adrian said. "He wants you to choose." A soft sound came from the hallway. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Retreating. Sophia slid down against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, breath shallow. "He knows about my brother," she said. "About everything." "Yes," Adrian said. "And he's using it to corner you." The call ended abruptly. Not by Adrian. Her screen went dark. Then lit up again. Incoming call. "Jin." She didn't answer. The phone vibrated again. And again. Then a message. "I'm disappointed," it read. "I thought you'd be braver." Her hands shook as she set the phone down. She didn't sleep that night. Every sound felt like an intrusion. Every shadow seemed to move when she wasn't looking. By morning, the city felt different. Sharper. Like it had teeth. At the restaurant, Layla pulled her aside immediately. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "There were men outside earlier. Asking questions." Sophia forced a smile. "I'm fine." Layla didn't believe her. Neither did Marco, who hovered closer than usual, eyes scanning every door. Word had spread without names being spoken. Something was wrong, and it centered on one waitress who no longer blended into the background. Midway through the shift, the private dining room was reserved again. Sophia already knew who it would be. Jin Corbett sat alone this time. No smile. No theatrics. Just cold patience. He gestured to the chair across from him as soon as she entered. "Sit," he said. She didn't. "I'm working," Sophia replied, voice steady through sheer effort. "Not anymore," Jin said. "I bought out your shift." The words landed like a verdict. She stayed standing. "You don't own me." Jin's eyes flicked up slowly. "No. But I own your past. And your brother's future." Her chest tightened. "Leave him out of this." "I tried," Jin said mildly. "You should have seen the mess he made. Debts laid on debts. Names he should never have spoken." She clenched her fists. "That was years ago." "Time doesn't erase obligation," Jin replied. "People like us don't forget." He leaned forward. "Adrian thinks he's protecting you. He thinks this is about rivalry. Pride." "It's not?" she asked quietly. Jin smiled then. Not cruelly. Almost sadly. "No. This is about possession. And leverage." The door opened behind her. Adrian stepped in. The temperature dropped. "Get away from her," Adrian said flatly. Jin didn't look back. "See? He speaks as if you already his." Sophia turned. Adrian's expression was carved from restraint, eyes dark with something close to fury. "You shouldn't be here," he said to her. "You don't get to decide that either," she shot back, fear cracking into anger. Jin stood, satisfied. "Good. Let's stop pretending." He faced Adrian fully now. "I know about her brother. I know where he is. And I know how to make him disappear." Adrian didn't flinch. "Touch him," he said, "and you won't live long enough to enjoy it." Jin laughed softly. "Threats. Always the same." He turned back to Sophia. "You can end this. Come with me. Publicly. Voluntarily. Adrian will back off. Your brother lives." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Don't listen to him." Sophia's chest ached. The choice pressed in from every side. One man offering control disguised as safety. The other offering protection that might ignite a war. "And if I don't?" she asked Jin. His smile vanished. "Then you lose everything." Silence swallowed the room. Sophia looked at Adrian. Really looked at him. The restraint. The tension. The way he stood slightly in front of her without realizing it, as if his body had already decided what his words would never claim. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "No," Adrian said quietly. "It isn't." She stepped back. Once. Twice. Away from both of them. "I need time," she said. Jin shook his head. "Time is over." Sophia turned and walked out. No one stopped her. That night, her apartment was empty when she arrived. Too empty. Drawers open. Closet disturbed. The past dug up and scattered across the floor, documents, old photos, things she had hidden from herself. On her bed lay her phone. One message on the screen. You chose wrong. She sank to the floor, chest caving inward, the weight of it finally crushing her. This was the darkest hour. She was alone. Her past had found her. And the men circling her life had turned from rivals into inevitabilities. For the first time since this began, Sophia Murrin was no longer sure there was a way out at all. Sophia didn't cry. Not when she picked up the scattered papers from the floor. Not when she found the photo she thought she'd destroyed, the one of her and her brother years ago, both of them smiling like the world hadn't learned how to hunt them yet. Not even when she realized how thoroughly Jin had invaded her life without laying a hand on her. She sat on the floor until dawn, back against the bed, breathing through the fear until it burned down into something sharper. Resolve. By morning, she understood the truth she had been running from. She wasn't trapped because she was weak. She was trapped because she had been hiding. And hiding had given men like Jin leverage. Her phone vibrated at 6:12 a.m. Unknown number. She answered. Are you done running? Adrian asked. She closed her eyes. You knew I'd answer. Yes, he said. Because you're not a victim. You're just tired of being treated like one. She stood slowly, moving to the window. The city looked unchanged, cars moving, people rushing to lives untouched by power games, but Sophia felt different inside it now. He tore my place apart, she said. He wanted me scared. And did it work? Adrian asked. She thought of Jin's message. You chose wrong. No, she said. It clarified things. A pause. Then, quietly, good. Jin thinks this is about possession, Sophia continued. You think it's about protection. You're both wrong. Silence stretched, attentive now. This is about control, she said. And I'm done letting either of you decide my life. Adrian exhaled slowly. I was hoping you'd say that. She turned back into the room, stepping over the remnants of her past. My brother isn't the liability Jin thinks he is. No, Adrian agreed. He isn't. Her breath caught. You know where he is. Yes. You didn't tell Jin everything, she realized. I told him enough to make him reckless, Adrian said. But not enough to win. Sophia's heart pounded, not with fear this time, but something closer to alignment. Then we stop reacting, she said. We move first. A beat. Then Adrian said the words that changed everything. I need you to trust me. She almost laughed. You've been asking that since the wine spill. And now? He asked. She thought of the way he had stepped in front of her without claiming her. The way he had never touched her without permission. The way he had warned her, even when it cost him leverage. Yes, she said. But this time, you trust me too. Another pause. Then, softer, done. They met that afternoon, not at the restaurant, not at her apartment, but in a quiet cafe near the river where no one expected men like Adrian Salvatore to sit without an entourage. Sophia told him everything. Not just about her brother's debts, but about why she had disappeared, how she had learned to read men like Jin early, how she had survived by becoming forgettable. Invisible. I don't want to be invisible anymore, she said. Adrian listened without interrupting, without judgment. When she finished, he reached across the table, not touching her hand, just close enough to offer warmth. You're not invisible, he said. You never were. Something loosened in her chest then. Something she hadn't realized she'd been holding tight for years. This ends tonight, Sophia said. Adrian nodded. Jin thinks you'll break or submit. He's wrong. They stood together, no longer protector and protected, no longer obsession and object. Partners. As they left the cafe, Sophia felt it, the shift. The city didn't loom anymore. It sharpened around her, alive with possibility instead of threat. For the first time since this began, hope wasn't fragile. It was deliberate. And somewhere across the city, Jin Corbett was already moving, confident, arrogant, unaware that the waitress he believed cornered had just stopped running. The final confrontation was coming. And Sophia Murrin was finally ready to choose herself. The private room was already locked when Jin Corbett arrived. That alone should have warned him. The restaurant was closed to the public, lights dimmed, chairs stacked, the hum of refrigeration the only sound beneath the low murmur of men stationed in the shadows. Jin entered without hesitation, coat draped perfectly, confidence unbroken. He had chosen this place deliberately. It was symbolic. The stage where everything began. He expected leverage. He did not expect resistance. Sophia stood at the center of the room. Not behind a table. Not near a door. Not hiding behind anyone. Waiting. Adrian was there too, but not beside her. He stood several steps back, arms loose at his sides, posture relaxed in the way only men certain of their position ever allowed themselves. Jin's gaze flicked between them, irritation flashing for the first time. "This is new," he said lightly. "You standing instead of hovering." Sophia met his eyes without flinching. "You wanted a choice. Here it is." Jin smiled. "Good. Then let's end this." He snapped his fingers once. Nothing happened. The smile faltered. Jin turned slowly, scanning the room. "Where are my men?" Adrian spoke for the first time. "Outside. Disarmed. Paid well enough to forget tonight." Jin's jaw tightened. "You think money solves loyalty?" "No," Adrian replied calmly. "Clarity does." Jin laughed once, sharp. "You always did think yourself principled." Sophia stepped forward. "This ends now, Jin. You don't own my past. You don't own my brother. And you don't own me." Jin's gaze hardened. "You're making a mistake." "No," she said. "I corrected one." She reached into her apron, still wearing it, deliberately, and set a phone on the table between them. The screen lit up. Messages. Transfers. Names. Evidence Jin never imagined she possessed. "You underestimated invisibility," Sophia continued. "People talk around those they don't respect. They confess. They brag. They slip." Adrian's voice was quiet but lethal. "You told her everything she needed without realizing it." Jin stared at the phone, then back at her. "You'd destroy me?" Sophia shook her head. "No. I'm giving you a choice." Silence pressed in. "Walk away," she said. "From me. From my family. From this city. You leave tonight, and this stays buried." "And if I don't?" Jin asked. Adrian stepped forward then, just one pace. "Enough. Then you lose everything," he said. "Not violently. Publicly. Permanently." For the first time, Jin hesitated. Not because he feared Adrian. Because he believed Sophia. He studied her, really studied her now, not as an object, not as leverage, but as an equal who had learned his language too well. "You were never supposed to be this," he said quietly. Sophia's voice was steady. "Neither were you." The moment stretched, taut as wire. Then Jin smiled, not cruelly, not kindly. Resigned. "You chose him," he said. Sophia didn't look at Adrian. "I chose myself." Jin laughed softly and shook his head. "That's always the dangerous choice." He turned and walked toward the door without another word. The room exhaled. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt different, cleaner, lighter. Sophia's legs trembled as the adrenaline drained away. Adrian was at her side instantly, not touching, just close enough to steady her if she fell. "It's over," he said. She nodded slowly. "No," she corrected. "It's finished." She looked around the room one last time, the place where she had spilled wine, where attention had found her, where power had tried to decide her fate. Then she untied her apron and set it on the table. Adrian watched her, understanding dawning. "You're leaving." "Yes," she said. "Not running. Choosing." He held her gaze. "Wherever you go." "Will be because I want to," she finished. A small smile touched his mouth. "Then I'll walk with you. If you let me." Sophia considered him for a long moment. Then she reached for his hand. The war had ended. Not with blood. But with truth. And for the first time since obsession had found her, Sophia Morin stepped into the night free, her future no longer claimed by power, but earned by courage. Morning arrived without ceremony. No sirens. No gunfire. No frantic calls demanding loyalty or blood. Just sunlight slipping through the cafe windows as Sophia unlocked the door for the last time. She moved slowly, deliberately, letting herself feel it. The smell of fresh coffee grounds, the quiet creak of the floorboards, the echo of a life she had outgrown. This place had been a battlefield disguised as routine. A cage disguised as comfort. Now it was simply, done. Adrian waited outside. Not leaning against a car. Not surrounded by guards. Just standing there, sleeves rolled up, looking like a man who had chosen peace without losing power. She joined him, keys resting heavy in her palm. "You don't have to come," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "That's why I want to." They walked. Not fast. Not hiding. Not chased. News would travel, of course. It always did. Two empires had quietly dissolved their war overnight. One boss vanished into obscurity. Another dismantled his throne piece by piece, transferring control, erasing old debts, choosing legacy over dominance. People would speculate. They would never know the truth. That the most dangerous force in the room had never been the men with guns, but the woman everyone ignored. Weeks passed. Sophia left the city. She didn't disappear, she expanded. A coastal town. Salt air. A small restaurant overlooking water that never demanded more than honesty. She learned menus again. Chose colors. Hired people who laughed easily. Built something that belonged entirely to her. Adrian visited at first. Then stayed. He didn't bring the past with him. No threats. No shadows. Only presence. Respect. Space. Love, when it finally settled between them, did not arrive like obsession had. It arrived quietly. In shared mornings. In arguments resolved without fear. In the understanding that neither of them needed to be owned to be chosen. One evening, as the sun bled into the sea, Sophia watched guests talking, laughing, living, unaware of how close she had once come to losing everything. She turned to Adrian. Funny, isn't it? What? How easily people miss the moment that changes everything. He smiled. That's why stories matter. She looked at him, then out toward the horizon. And choices, she said. If you've stayed with this story until now, you already understand that power doesn't always look like dominance, and freedom rarely arrives loudly. Sometimes, it's just the courage to walk away and build something better. So tell me, where are you watching from tonight? And what choice would you make if everything was on the line? If you haven't already, take a moment to stay connected. Stories like this only keep coming when people choose to return. Sophia did. And because of that, her ending was not survival. It was happiness.